Welcome, Joanne. Thank you so much for coming in to do this video for Legal Choices. It's great to have your expertise with us today. Do you want to just give us a bit of an overview of your background?
Yes, certainly. So I'm Joanne and I'm a solicitor with a firm called EMG Solicitors, and we're based up in Durham. And I'm from Durham, from County Durham, been there all my life. And I'm a specialist in litigation and dispute resolution.
Let's begin about identifying tenancy legal issues. As a landlord, in what sort of situations might I end up needing legal representation?
Well, what I would say in terms of the main issues that landlords will have, normally it is to do with rent and tenants not paying rent, but how you may identify that you're heading in the direction of a dispute may be something your tenant says, it might be a complaint from a neighbour, or if it's a bit more serious, you might get a letter from the local authority saying you haven't done this, that and the other. So I would say they're the main things to watch out for.
They're the red flags to
Yeah,
keep
they're the
an
red
eye on.
flags, yeah.
From a landlord's perspective, what are the telltale signs that a problem has become a legal issue?
If you have a tenant who is saying things like, you haven't done this, you should have done that, I'm going to take you to court, then clearly that's going to be a legal issue. But again, it could be coming from a third party, like a neighbour saying your tenant's antisocial, they're making a load of racket, they're noisy, they're dealing drugs or whatever from the property. And also anything you might get correspondence from a solicitor or the local authority.
Sounds like as a landlord, it's key to have good relationships with your neighbours.
It is, yes. And also you want neighbours of a tenanted property who can come to you and say this is a problem tenant.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find there are any areas where clients are underprepared when dealing with legal issues, or areas where there is a lack of knowledge?
Yes, I would say, I mean, the law does change quite a lot, especially in the arena of landlord and tenant. There's been a lot of legislation over the last 5 to 10 years. And what we find is a lot of landlords don't really know what their obligations are. They don't really know what the tenant's rights are. There's a lot of formalities now when you set up a tenancy agreement, and we do find a lot of landlords don't know what they are and they haven't done them, and that'll cause problems further down the line.
If we just shift gears in terms of getting advice, if a landlord is renting out a property and having issues, what options are available to them for gaining knowledge and accessing advice?
There's a lot of information you can find just doing a Google search. There's a lot of information and advice on various websites. For example, if you go onto the government website, there's a lot of information for landlords, there's a lot of information for tenants. I would suggest people read both lots so they know what the other one is entitled to do and what their options are. If you're a landlord, you could be a member of some kind of national membership, like the National Residential Landlords Association or the Guild of Residential Landlords. Obviously, you can go to a solicitor as well. And I would say they are the main things, but certainly a lot of information on just through a Google search on the website.
What advice can landlords access if they're having issues with a tenant?
In terms of advice, where you would go to, obviously solicitors, the legal profession, that might be in the form of a consultation or appointment, or it may just be looking on their website. You could look at websites of places like the Citizens Advice Bureau or charity like Shelter. While a lot of people think they are geared towards tenants rather than landlords, they are, but it is the same law that's set out.
And like you said before, it's good to know both positions.
It is. If you have a letting agency, if you have a managing agent, they should be a good source of information as well, because they should be experienced in those kind of things as well.
Where can a landlord turn for legal advice?
Well, the obvious starting point would be the legal profession, but also those organisations that I've mentioned, memberships if you are a professional landlord, an agent, or websites. But definitely the government website, not just any old website. You know, if you're doing research online, choose
a trusted source.
A trusted source,
Can a landlord represent themselves when it comes to legal matters?
They can do. What we would say is landlords, if you're an experienced landlord, there's a lot you can do yourself. That can include actually starting court proceedings and going through the court process and representing yourself at court if you need to. The main advantages of that are you don't have to pay a solicitor to do it for you, but there are a lot of pitfalls which can make what you do wrong, the wrong thing to do, scupper your chances of getting the goal that you're trying to achieve.
And I suppose, like you said, the law is so complex.
It is, yes, and it's a minefield, to be honest.
So, and it varies between England and Wales?
It does, yes. But all the information, all those sources that I've mentioned do cover Wales as well as England.
How do you get the most from your legal representation as a landlord?
What I would say is that if you are seeking legal representation, have as much information and as much documentation as you've got, have it available, be honest and upfront about what the position is, if there are any problems, if you think you have fallen short of the law in some way, or you haven't done this or you haven't done that, just so that's no surprises for your solicitor further down the line. So you seek advice from them and follow the advice. And do it quickly.
Yeah, and I suppose it always helps if they come with evidence, any documentation.
Evidence, always keep your documentation.
Keep all texts, emails, etc.
Texts, emails, all that kind of thing. Your documentation in relation to setting up your tenancy at the outset as well, because there's some key information in there which solicitors need to see, which will determine on what options are available for you.
Perfect. What are the key things landlords should think about before renting a property out?
There is a long list. The main things you need to think about are what your obligations as a landlord are going to be. So it's not just a case of, here's a tenant, I'll let them in, here's the keys, you give me whatever per month for the rent. There's a lot of obligations, so you may need to be registered as a landlord with a local authority. If you are renting a house of multiple occupancy, you've got to have a licence for that. You have got to provide various documentation to your tenant at the outset. That might be to do with the gas safety certificate, EPC. You've got statutory documentation called prescribed information you may have to give to a tenant. You've got to think about whether you're taking a deposit, how you're going to protect that. The list is endless.
And so key to come early and prepared and get legal advice, just so you make sure
legal advice, because the law does change so quickly. You really have got to be on top of what the latest law is. And we do find that some landlords will be relying on, for example, an old tenancy that they've been using for the last 20 years. Or they're not aware that they've got to give a tenant this, that or the other. And that can really limit the action you can take as a landlord.
If a landlord is having issues with a tenant behaving badly, what are the key things they should think about?
First thing, I would always recommend you get legal advice. But you do need to know what your tenant's rights are before you start doing anything. First thing I would probably do is take an informal approach, speak to the tenant. If they're doing something wrong, ask them to stop. Remind them that they have obligations under a tenancy agreement, and that if they breach those obligations, then the landlord is entitled to take legal action.
And so it's quite key, we take proportionate action.
Proportionate action, give them a warning and then look further ahead in terms of legal options if it looks like that's going to be what has to be done. But it really should be the last resort.
Absolutely. So it's not one you can just instantly do. You have to try all measures before you get to that point. What are the key things landlords can do to protect themselves when they start to become worried about issues with a tenant, or even before they become worried?
Collect your evidence. If, for example, it's something like antisocial behaviour, you need good evidence to show that is the case, to prove that is the case. So you need to speak to neighbours, you need to have all your evidence together. Then you should really be seeking legal advice. As soon as you think something may end up in the court process, I would say that's the time really to speak to a solicitor. But if you're not sure, before you get to that stage, speak to a solicitor at that stage as well.
But what you can do is before you get to that solicitor, make sure you've got all your evidence. And
all your evidence, yes. And if you look at what your obligations were and you think, well, I haven't done that, then you really need to speak to a solicitor as to what your next stage can be in light of you not having done that.
If we could just go through issues and complaints, what are some of the most common misconceptions on the part of a landlord who think they can take action against their tenant?
Well, what we find is a lot of landlords think that if the tenant is doing something or they just want the tenant out, that they can just take back possession of the property. Wait till the tenant goes out, change the locks, bag all the stuff up and put it in bin bags and put it outside. I would say that's one of the main things, but that is a very dangerous thing for a landlord to do. Also, not being aware of what your obligations are. Bear in mind what we've said earlier about how strict the law is these days in as far as landlords go. And not knowing what the tenant's rights are and what the tenant might do if you try and take action as well.
So it all has to be proportionate and
it's all got to be proportionate, but it's all got to be just so in line with the law. And it's very, very easy to fall foul of the law.
What's the difference between your matter not turning out as you hoped and having grounds to complain about your legal advisor or the other side's legal representation?
Well, in terms of landlord and tenant legislation, the law is quite clear. And what your solicitor can't do is wave a magic wand, and if you are on the wrong side of the law, you can't just wave the magic wand and put you on the right side of the law. But there are things that solicitors can do to make sure that your best case is put forward if there is a dispute, for example, if it has to go through the court process. So that's very different if everything's been done properly and you just haven't gotten the outcome that you wanted. That doesn't necessarily mean that your solicitor has done something wrong or made a mistake. If your solicitor has made a mistake, if they haven't followed your instructions or they've done something wrong or they've missed a key date, then that could be grounds for a complaint.
And they're more the service elements, so there's a delay.
Service elements, in terms of either not doing things properly, which you're paying a professional to do, so they should be able to get it right, or not following your instructions.
Makes sense. What can you do if you think your legal representation hasn't done a good job?
First thing we would always say to our clients would be, if you think things aren't going the way you thought they would, raise it with your solicitor who's acting for you. If that doesn't get the desired response, you may escalate it to a supervisor. And after that, then really you are looking at a complaint, a formal complaint in line with the company's or the firm's complaints process and policy. And after that, once you've been through that complaints process, if you're still dissatisfied, you can look at the legal ombudsman.
And it's critical that you do it. The first port of call is with the firm. Give them an opportunity to rectify anything if they can do so. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Joanne. That was brilliant, and it's brilliant just getting some of your insight and knowledge on this area. I'm sure it'll benefit a lot of landlords.
Thank you.